In the depths of prehistory, long before language, long before memory, there existed a trap so dangerous, so cunning, that even the creators never understood the cost. It was a time when survival was the only religion and every breath was a borrowed miracle. Early humans wandered through a world carved by giants, hunted by shadows bigger than their courage, and tested by a planet that demanded evolution or extinction. But one day, in their desperate attempt to protect their young, they built something new, something powerful, something that would change the destiny of their species. A trap crafted not only from stone and strategy, but from fear. What they didn't know was this: the trap they created to save life would become the same trap that threatened it. Because the greatest dangers in human history were never the predators outside, but the creations that lived within our own minds. This is the forgotten chapter of our survival. A story buried beneath a million years of dust and evolution. A reminder that every invention carries a shadow, and every step forward leaves a trace behind. Welcome to the Healing Mirror, where ancient stories reveal the truth about who we are, who we became, and what we must never forget. The greatest dangers are not the beasts we fight, but the fears we build into our own inventions. To survive, humanity must learn not only to create, but to understand the shadows our creations cast. Fear creates tools, but also traps. In the earliest chapters of human existence, fear was not a weakness. It was the silent architect shaping every decision, every movement, and every invention our ancestors dared to craft. Imagine a world where every nightfall carried uncertainty, where every shifting shadow might conceal a predator, and where survival depended on listening to instincts sharper than reason itself. In such a world, fear became the mind's first teacher. It taught early humans where to hide, when to run, and when to stay absolutely still. It sharpened reflexes, elevated senses, and carved vigilance deep into the nervous system. It was fear that whispered warnings before danger even arrived, allowing early humans to evolve faster than the predators that hunted them. Yet fear did something far more profound: it sparked creativity. When the threat of extinction pressed against the fragile boundary of life, the human mind innovated. It created fire not merely for warmth, but to push darkness back. It shaped stones into blades not just for hunting, but to keep death at a distance. It taught humans to build traps, pits, barriers, and weapons that extended their reach far beyond their physical limitations. Fear became the invisible hand guiding human ingenuity, pushing them to imagine solutions to dangers they had not yet encountered. It was the reason they studied animal behavior, the reason they learned patterns, and the reason they developed strategies that even nature did not expect from them. But fear also carried a subtle danger: its ability to linger after the threat was gone. A tool created from urgency could survive long after the moment of need, becoming something heavier, more complicated, and often more harmful than intended. When early humans built traps to protect their families from predators, they never imagined that their own creations could backfire. Yet fear-driven tools were not crafted with balance or long-term vision. They were built in panic, shaped by desperation. If a pit trap was deep enough to stop a beast, it was deep enough to injure a human. If a weapon was sharp enough to kill, it was sharp enough to wound its wielder. Fear created tools that solved problems instantly but introduced consequences quietly. Consequences that could emerge days, months, or even generations later. Fear also influenced social behavior, shaping not just tools but relationships. It taught humans to stay close to their groups, to trust familiar faces, and to treat outsiders with suspicion. This was a survival mechanism at the time, but it planted seeds of division that would later grow into conflicts far more dangerous than any predator. A tribe that feared wolves would build defenses. A tribe that feared another tribe might build weapons. The same mind that created fire to survive the night could also use fire to attack another group. Fear did not differentiate between protection and aggression. It fueled both with the same intensity. Thus, tools born from fear could become traps for entire communities, turning necessary caution into unnecessary conflict. On a deeper psychological level, fear shaped the inner world of humans. It taught them to anticipate danger, but it also made them imagine danger where none existed. The mind that once recognized predator tracks on the ground could one day imagine threats hidden in silence, shadows, or even within other humans. This mental evolution gave rise to anxiety, suspicion, and the instinct to over-prepare. A simple defensive structure could escalate into a fortress. A protective measure could become an obsession. A tool meant to keep danger out could eventually imprison the ones who built it. Fear pushed humans to guard their lives, but sometimes it made them guard too tightly, trapping themselves behind the walls they raised. This paradox extended to the natural environment as well. When humans created traps to hunt animals, they increased their survival, but they also disrupted ecosystems. They removed predators that maintained balance. They hunted certain species too aggressively. They modified landscapes without knowing the long-term effects. Fear-driven ingenuity allowed them to adapt quickly, but it also accelerated unintended consequences. In time, these early mistakes would echo through generations, showing how tools created under fear could alter the world far beyond the initial moment of need. Over the centuries, fear also shaped memory. Stories were told not only to preserve knowledge, but to keep fear alive as a warning. Tales of dangerous beasts, deadly storms, or enemy tribes passed down through generations served as survival guides. Yet these stories often grew more dramatic, more cautionary, and eventually more restrictive. What began as practical wisdom sometimes solidified into rigid beliefs or taboos that limited exploration or innovation. The same fear that once kept humans alive could later hold them back, trapping them within boundaries that no longer served a purpose. The deeper truth is this: fear sharpens the mind but also narrows it. It pushes humans to act quickly, but not always wisely. It fuels survival, but often at the cost of peace. Every tool crafted from fear carries a dual nature: protection on one side, limitation on the other. The pit trap that saves a tribe from a predator might one day injure a child. The weapon that ensures survival might also spark a rivalry. The walls built for safety might isolate a community. Fear gives birth to brilliance, but its offspring always carry traces of the darkness from which they emerged. Human survival depends on unity more than strength. In the earliest ages of our existence, when the world was ruled by creatures far stronger, faster, and more fearsome than any human, it quickly became clear that individual power meant almost nothing. A single human, no matter how alert or clever, could not outrun a charging predator, could not fight off a pack of beasts, and could not withstand the brutal winters or violent storms that shaped the prehistoric landscape. Strength alone was fragile. It broke easily under the pressure of nature's harshness. What kept our species alive was something far less obvious but infinitely more powerful: the ability to stand together. Unity was not just a cooperative choice. It was a survival instinct woven into the earliest human stories. When a fire was built, it warmed a group, not a single body. When food was hunted, the reward was shared because one hunter's success depended on another's support. Humans learned early that even the boldest idea required many hands to turn it into reality. A lone mind could imagine a plan, but only a united group could bring it to life. This understanding turned small gatherings into tribes and tribes into communities, forming the earliest foundations of human society. Every shelter was built faster with more hands. Every night was safer when more eyes watched the darkness. Unity also gave rise to communication. Early humans developed sounds, gestures, and eventually the early forms of language not to express individuality but to coordinate survival. Warning calls were shared signals of danger. Hand signs helped plan hunts. Stories passed knowledge down the line, teaching younger generations how to avoid the mistakes of those before them. Each piece of learned wisdom was preserved through collective memory, not through personal accomplishment. No single individual could experience enough dangers or victories in one lifetime to master survival. But a bonded group, connected through shared knowledge, could evolve far faster than any solitary creature. Cooperation extended far beyond physical assistance. Emotional unity played an equally important role. Fear was easier to face when shared. Grief was lighter when carried by many. Even the act of watching over one another in sleep-rotating night guards or sleeping in protective clusters created bonds deeper than instinct. Humans began to understand that survival wasn't just about escaping predators. It was about belonging to something larger than oneself. This sense of belonging strengthened identity, boosted morale, and encouraged individuals to take risks for the sake of the group. That willingness to protect others, not just oneself, was a turning point in human evolution. Unity also allowed humans to attempt things that once seemed impossible. Large hunts for massive animals required precise coordination. Migration across dangerous landscapes required leadership and trust. Building structures, traps, and shelters demanded synchronized effort. These accomplishments were not the product of brute strength but of shared purpose. Even small tasks, collecting berries, preparing hides, sharpening tools, became part of a collective rhythm. Each person contributed to the whole, and the whole uplifted each person in return. This mutual dependency shaped the structure of early communities, where roles naturally formed: hunters, gatherers, watchers, toolmakers. Firekeepers, elders, and children all played irreplaceable roles. Unity also protected early humans from internal collapse. Conflicts were inevitable, but cooperation required harmony. Tribes developed simple systems for resolving disputes, dividing resources, and ensuring fairness. Those who threatened group stability were often taught, corrected, or guided by elders. Humans learned that disorder within was more dangerous than any threat outside. Even predators took advantage of divided groups, targeting the ones that scattered instead of those that moved as one. This reinforced a lesson that echoed across generations. Disunity was an open wound in the fabric of survival. Additionally, unity allowed humans to adapt to change in ways that stronger but solitary creatures could not. When climate shifted, when prey migrated, or when new dangers appeared, humans innovated as a group. Decisions were discussed sometimes silently, sometimes through signals, and survival strategies evolved from collective wisdom. Tools improved because many minds observed and contributed. Habitats changed because many hands built and rebuilt. Human flexibility came from shared intelligence, not individual might. Even the concept of safety expanded with unity. A child was not the responsibility of one parent, but of an entire group. The elderly were not abandoned. Their knowledge made them valuable teachers. Injured members were cared for instead of left behind, because every life held potential, whether for hunting, crafting, or storytelling. This interdependence strengthened resilience. A tribe that refused to leave anyone behind had more hands to rebuild after disaster and more minds to generate solutions to new challenges. Unity also created courage. A single person facing a roaring beast might freeze, but a group, standing together, found strength in numbers. Courage was amplified by the presence of others. The shared heartbeat of a united tribe gave humans a psychological advantage unmatched in the animal kingdom. Even predators sometimes retreated at the sight of a coordinated group, sensing the collective will behind the humans who stood shoulder to shoulder. Over time, unity became the invisible force shaping human destiny. It allowed our ancestors to migrate across continents, survive near extinction, endure harsh climates, and outlast creatures far superior in physical power. It transformed fear into strategy, chaos into organization, and vulnerability into resilience. Without unity, humanity would have vanished in the shadows of the ancient world. With it, humans became the first species capable of altering not just their environment, but the course of their own evolution. Every creation shapes the creator. From the earliest moments of human existence, every tool crafted, every structure built, and every idea formed in the mind quietly began reshaping the very people who made them. When early humans picked up a stone and sharpened it into a blade, they weren't just altering the stone, they were transforming their own behavior, their instincts, and even the way they perceived the world. The simple act of crafting something changed how they thought, how they moved, and how they survived. Creation became a mirror, reflecting both human potential and human vulnerability. The earliest tools extended strength, but they also changed how humans approached danger. Instead of relying solely on instinct, they began relying on the things they created, and that dependency slowly rewired the human mind. The blade made hunting easier, but it also shifted the human relationship with prey, with the environment, and with one another. As humans built more complex tools, these creations began influencing their daily lives in deeper ways. When they created fire, it gave them warmth and protection, but it also brought people together in new social patterns. The fire became a center of storytelling, planning, and shared identity. It changed nighttime from a period of fear into a time of bonding. It shaped emotions, traditions, and the rhythm of life itself. Humans who once lived hour to hour now lived in cycles, gathering around flames that shaped their sense of time and community. The creation of fire not only protected humans, it changed their psychology, their culture, and their understanding of safety. When early humans built shelters, those shelters began shaping their sense of territory and belonging. A simple roof of leaves and branches could shift the idea of home, turning landscapes into meaningful spaces rather than temporary stops. With shelter came a new kind of thought, planning for the future. Humans began to think days ahead instead of minutes. This foresight, born from creation, became one of the most defining traits of human intelligence. The structures they built shaped their thinking, encouraging strategies, routines, and new forms of cooperation. These shelters also changed social dynamics. Those who built together bonded deeply, learning to depend on one another in ways that went beyond immediate survival. As humans learned to create traps, they adopted the calm patience required to use them. Traps taught humans to think like their prey, to study patterns, to predict behavior. This reshaped the human brain, sharpening observation and encouraging long-term planning. But these same traps also changed moral boundaries within the tribe. With new power came new ethical challenges. The ability to catch prey without direct confrontation introduced questions about balance, responsibility, and control over the environment. Humans learned not just to hunt, but to take from nature in deliberate ways, and this shifted how they viewed their place in the world. Even simple tools shaped hierarchy and identity. The one who knew how to craft the sharpest spear or build the strongest shelter became valuable, respected, and often influential. Skill shaped status, and creation shaped community roles. No longer was survival based solely on strength. Creativity itself became a form of power. This reshaped relationships, creating early foundations for leadership, mentorship, and cooperation. People began to gather around those who could create, and this changed the structure of tribes, giving rise to new forms of organization and mutual dependence. Creation also shaped memory. A crafted tool carried a story: who made it, why it was made, and how it succeeded or failed. These stories became lessons, and those lessons were passed from generation to generation. Over time, creation shaped culture. Rituals developed around fire, around hunting tools, around the preparation of food. What began as survival turned into tradition, and tradition guided behavior long after the original reasons were forgotten. Creations became symbols, and symbols influenced identity. A simple carving could represent hope, fear, gratitude, or warning. Humans learned to attach meaning to objects, and those objects became anchors for emotion and belief. On a deeper level, creation shaped the evolution of the human mind. Every invented tool required visualization, imagining something that did not yet exist. This ability to imagine transformed the mind into something more than reactive. It became creative, predictive, and reflective. The more humans created, the more they practiced imagination, strengthening neural pathways that later allowed them to dream, to innovate, and to question. The act of shaping the world with their hands slowly shaped the world inside their heads. Creation also shaped fear and courage. With tools, humans dared to confront threats they once fled from. With structures, they survived storms they once succumbed to. Each successful creation built confidence, and confidence shaped decisions. But every creation also carried consequences. A weapon could protect, but it could also harm. A trap could feed a tribe, but it could also injure an ally. This duality shaped human caution, responsibility, and awareness. Every invention required humans to consider not just what they could do, but what they should do. Through creation, humans began to understand the weight of choice. Ultimately, creation shaped the pace of human evolution. Tools accelerated survival, allowing humans to adapt faster than nature alone would permit. The more humans created, the more control they gained over their environment, and this control reshaped their bodies, minds, and societies. Creations changed how humans lived, how they thought, how they loved, how they fought, and how they understood the world around them. Creation did not just serve humans. It guided them, challenged them, and transformed them from survivors into innovators. Every crafted object became a quiet teacher, altering the minds and hearts of those who shaped it.